All right, so for this next image, I want to show you how you can take a nice high fashion image like this one and totally change the color tone and make it something that's even more high fashion and totally different by making the colors very cool. So let's go ahead and get started. So right off the bat, this image is very warm. And the feel I want to go for is something that's much cooler and almost like a cold feeling image. So I want to show you how you can do that using selective color. So let's go ahead and create a new selective color layer. So to do that, I want to really alter the blacks because a lot of the warmth in this image is coming from the shadows around the eyes and in the hair and even the shadows on the face. So let's drop down to the blacks. And the first thing I want to do is I want to make these really cool. So I'm going to add a bunch of cyan into these blacks. So maybe something like 30, 35 points of cyan. Now, obviously that's a little bit too green yellow. So to counterbalance that, we can add some magenta because that's the opposite of green. So maybe we'll add like 10 points, 9 points magenta. And we can take a little bit of yellow out, but just a tad. So maybe like 5 points. We don't want it to go too super blue. So already we can see how that's shifting back here, but it's a little too black in some of these areas. So I want to pull, it's a little too crushed in the shadow. So I'm going to pull a little bit of black out and yeah, something like that. So let's look at before and after. So definitely shifting the colors of our shadows, but it still needs some other adjustments. So let's go to the skin tones next. So there's definitely a lot of yellow in the skin here. So we'll do some adjustments in the yellows and the reds. So first let's go to yellows. And let's add cyan to really cool those. So I'm just going to drag this all the way over and see what that does. So it's not a huge adjustment, so I'm going to keep it all cyan in there. And then I'm going to back some of this yellow off. Now, yellow is the opposite of blue, so as we pull yellow out, it's definitely going to make this more blue. So something like that, it's already starting to make our image look very cool, and it's kind of giving it more of a high fashion editorial feel. Okay, so now that we've done that in the yellows, I want to go do some similar adjustments in the reds. So let's hop into the reds here. And let's start playing with the cyan. So obviously if we pulled it out, it would be much more warm in the skin tones, but I want it to be very cool. So we're going to bump that up. So I like the density here. I'm not too crazy about how greenish it's looking. So we're going to pull out some yellow. So let's pull this down. Let's see. Maybe not quite all the way, maybe about 85. And then let's even bump a little more magenta in here. Okay, so that's definitely looking cooler. But I think we could play with this a little bit more. Maybe not quite so cool in the skin tones. So we'll just bring a little bit of that yellow back. And okay, let's look at before and after so far. So we went from this really warm image in the shadows and pretty much everywhere, and we made it a very cool looking picture. Totally changed the whole color balance, and all we've done so far is one selective color adjustment. So I'm liking it so far. If we wanted to tweak it a little bit more, we could drop down to the neutrals and play with the cyans in there. So I might pull a little bit of cyan out, and then I'm gonna even play with the yellows here. Pull the yellow down just a couple points. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Okay. So I think that's good so far as the color tone goes. We definitely met our goal of making it cool. Now I think we could do a curves adjustment layer to really make this a little bit more of a high key image and just increase the contrast a little bit. So let's go ahead and click on curves, and we're just gonna pull, somewhere we want to, whoops, click back on our curves layer here. Let's click on our little hand tool. Let's brighten up some of these areas. So maybe somewhere in here. Don't want to go too bright. We don't want to blow it out. Maybe even a little bit more in the midtones. That's really smoothing that out. That's even helping smooth the skin out by getting rid of some of that mid-tone detail out here. And then we could drop the shadows down just a little bit. Okay, I'm really liking that so far. So I think that makes for a much more professional, high-key, high-fashion image. So the only other thing I might adjust now is our blacks have gotten very blue, so we might go back to our selective color adjustment, click on our blacks, maybe just pull that blue out a little bit, or what we could even do is add some yellow, and that's going to bring that back to a neutral, because blue and yellow are opposites. So something like that. Then we could go into our reds again, tweak this a little bit, bring that yellow back up just a tad. Okay. So I think that looks pretty darn good. So all we did was one selective color adjustment. We did blacks, neutrals, yellows, and reds, and made everything pretty much cooler. And then we did a curves adjustment layer, which really increased our contrast, made it a high key image, and I think overall made the image much better. So let's look at before and after. So here's before. A lot of density in the skin tone, not super high key, and just very warm. We did selective color and curves, and we really made this a high fashion, cool colored image, and I think it looks really awesome. So you may not want to use this for all of your images, but it gives you an idea of how you can change the total color tone of your image just by using a couple of the color adjustment layers we've been looking at. So go ahead and try this technique out on some of your own images and show them to me. Let me see what they look like, and let me know what you think about this technique.